My son bought a luxury house in Miami, then handed me the mortgage papers. You've saved up enough. It's time to help the family. I refused, so he sued me for $5.5 million. But on the day of the trial, the judge asked just one simple question. And before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Your subscription is very important to us. And now enjoy the story. The tea had long gone cold, but I still held the mug in my hands, staring out the window, feeling neither its warmth nor its taste. Outside, the morning fog was gradually dissipating, revealing my neighbor's front garden. The same roses that I had been meaning to prune for weeks, but just hadn't gotten around to. Everything around me seemed frozen, as if on pause. There was a tension in the air, like before something important but unpleasant. At 62, I already knew that when everything goes still, it's a worrying sign. It's in the silence that trouble most often creeps in. The doorbell rang at exactly 9:30. I didn't even go to the peephole. It was obvious it was Eugene. He always stands the same way. Shoulders back, chin forward, as if at a board meeting, not on his mother's doorstep. Next to him, as always, was Olivia. Her hair was salon perfect, not a single strand out of place, even though it was still early morning. In her hands, she clutched a leather folder to her chest as if it were a shield. "Good morning, Mom," Eugene said with his usual businesslike smile, which for a long time had exuded not warmth, but rehearsed politeness. "We brought coffee." He held out a bag from that same coffee shop downtown where a cup costs as much as my weekly groceries. "I have my own," I replied, but I opened the door and let them in anyway. As soon as they crossed the threshold, I immediately felt a weight settle on my shoulders. Not from age, not from fatigue. It was the same weight I knew by heart. The weight that comes when you're not being visited just because. Their eyes darted around my living room, quickly, mechanically, as if out of habit. Appraising, counting, estimating. Olivia perched on the edge of the sofa, the one my late husband, Arthur, and I had bought 15 years ago when we lived modestly and counted every penny. I had chosen the floral fabric myself, simple but soulful. Now it was faded, worn but familiar. And against her expensive jeans, it looked particularly alien. She had never liked this house. She had made that clear from the beginning. She said it was cramped, that everything was outdated, that it wasn't her level. And it hurt me to hear that. These weren't just walls, this was my life. "You look tired, Marian," she said, pursing her lips into a delicate smile, but her eyes remained cold. "Not sleeping well?" "No, I'm fine." I sank into my armchair. It was my favorite. Arthur had given it to me for my 50th birthday. Now the leather was cracked, but the chair still remembered the shape of my body. It hugged, it soothed. "Why are you here so early?" They exchanged a look. A very characteristic, familial, silent look, but everything was said. As if I weren't even in the room. Eugene cleared his throat. I knew this. He had been doing it since he was a teenager when he wanted to ask for something awkward. Usually money. "We came because we have some good news." He began and handed me a glossy brochure, thick, bright, with pictures like a realtor's. "We found a house, Mom. The one." On the cover was a luxurious mansion, snow-white columns, a swimming pool, the sea right outside the window, a huge kitchen like from an advertisement. "In Miami," he added, and there was so much pride in his voice, as if he had built it himself. "Yes, it's beautiful," I said, because it was truly beautiful. But not for us, not for people like me. And not for him either, to be honest. It wasn't even a dream. It was from a completely different life. "4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, Olivia said confidently. "A private beach, a terrace with a sea view, and a separate wing for the children. They'll be comfortable." The children, Michael and Christina, 6-year-old twins. I had only seen them a couple of times a year, and then by appointment. The parents were always on their phones, counting the minutes until they could leave, and the children were like shadows between a tablet and cartoons. "Sounds nice," I answered cautiously, because I didn't want to spoil the air right away. They exchanged another look, but now it was not just familial. It was tense, secretive. Eugene moved closer and folded his hands in the pose they show at negotiation trainings. An open dialogue. The thing is, we need a guarantor for the mortgage. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The room seemed to get colder. I had heard these words before, something similar. More than once. And each time with the same expression on his face. The face of an adult who believes he is owed. A guarantor, I repeated to buy a second. It's just a formality, Olivia quickly inserted. We have a good income stable. The bank just asks for additional security. It's like that for everyone now. And the amount? I knew I didn't want to hear it, but I asked. $550,000, Eugene said calmly, as if he were talking about a handbag or a refrigerator. But it's just for show. You won't have to pay anything, he added. I looked at the house in the picture again. The white facade, the palm trees, the water. Beautiful, of course. But this beauty made me uneasy, because I suddenly felt that behind this glossy cover was everything I had saved, everything I had hoped for, everything that Arthur and I had cherished our whole lives. 50 years of saving. 50 years without vacations, without restaurants, without indulgences. An old Honda, re-sewn curtains, shopping on sale. Everything to live calmly, reliably, not to depend on anyone. I need to think, I said. Not because I had doubts, but because I wanted to say something that would give me a break. Eugene raised an eyebrow slightly. His smile became strained. Think about what, Mom? It's just a standard guarantee. You won't even be paying. Then why do you need my signature? He stammered, then looked at Olivia. She nodded almost imperceptibly. Because you have an apartment, you have savings. And your family. Family. That word in his mouth sounded like a tool, a way to press a button. Not warmth, not love, but an argument. Arthur and I worked very hard to build this stability, I said quietly. We sacrificed a lot. Dad's been gone for 3 years, Eugene answered sharply. He won't be using it. It even became hard for me to breathe. Arthur had died of a heart attack. Suddenly. Just as we were starting to dream about retirement, just as we were starting to live for ourselves. Eugene, Olivia said gently and touched his arm. But as always, not a single word of regret, not a single apology. I stood up. With difficulty, but I stood up. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Mom, come on, don't be dramatic. Eugene remained seated. His voice became condescending, almost patronizing. We're just asking for a favor, after everything we've done for you. And what have you done for me? I didn't even realize how it had slipped out. When did you just come over because you wanted to? When was the last time you called not because you had to? We're busy. Work, children, worries. We can't sit around all day being lonely, feeling sorry for ourselves. These words were like a knife. I looked at my son, my own beloved son, and I didn't recognize him. Leave, I said. Marion, Olivia began. Out of my house. They left. But before leaving, Eugene placed a stack of documents on the coffee table. Think about it, Mom. You have a couple of days, but don't take too long. The house won't wait forever. The door closed quietly, almost politely, but behind it remained an emptiness and papers that could destroy everything that Arthur and I had built for decades. I took the documents from the table and tried to make sense of them, but my eyes grew tired, the letters blurred. It was all there. Terms, interest rates, clauses, unfamiliar words. But one thing I understood immediately. This was not a formality. This was a real responsibility for hundreds of thousands. And if something went wrong, it would all fall on me. I looked up and looked at my room. The very one where Arthur and I had spent almost 30 years. The armchair, the blanket, the bookshelf, the photograph. My house, our house, too modest for someone like Olivia, but for me a fortress. 50 years of a sensible life. I had always counted everything, saved, accumulated, bought simple but reliable things. I put money in a jar, didn't take out loans, didn't go on vacation on credit. I'm not rich, just cautious, just raised that way. Not to hope for a chance, not to rely on anyone. The phone rang unexpectedly. On the screen, Helen. My neighbor, a widow, lives 3 houses down. I picked up the phone without thinking. Marion. Her voice was warm with a hoarseness as always. I saw your Eugene leaving. Are you all right? I went to the window. Helen was standing in her kitchen with the phone in her hand and looking in my direction. Not with curiosity, not with judgment, but as a person who really cared. I'm fine, I said out of habit. Then I fell silent. When had I started lying to those who really cared about me? Actually, no, not at all. Not at all. Come over, she said without any extra words. I'll make some real coffee, not that expensive swill from downtown. I looked at the papers again, at the glossy cover of the house, at the numbers that made my hands shake, and I just put everything back on the table. I got dressed, took my keys, and went out. For the first time in a long time, I didn't look back. At Helen's, it smelled of cinnamon and ground coffee, the kind that Arthur always brewed in the morning in an old Turkish pot. On the table was a service, her best, the one she had inherited from her grandmother, white with blue, thin with flowers along the edge. And in this was such a simple, quiet care that I suddenly felt lighter. Sit down, she said, pointing to a chair by the window. Tell me, what has your son done now? We had known each other for 8 years, since she had moved in after her husband's death. Our friendship had not formed immediately, but it was strong, built on walks, conversations, borrowing a couple of spoons of sugar. The understanding was without words, as between women who have experienced the same thing. Life after. He wants me to be a guarantor for a mortgage, I said, accepting the cup. For $550,000. A house in Miami. An ocean, a pool, 5 bathrooms. Helen's hand froze with the cup. What? He says it's just a formality. Marian. Her voice became hard, confident, like that of a former headmistress, which she was. Nothing connected with that kind of money is ever just a formality. I said I would think about it, and then I asked them to leave. And you did the right thing. She sat down. There was a concentration in her eyes, almost professional. And what does your intuition tell you? Intuition? When was the last time I had listened to it? When had I stopped trusting it? Why had Eugene's confident voice suddenly become more weighty than my own inner feeling? It tells me that this is a trap, I said honestly. That if I sign, I will lose everything that Arthur and I have been collecting for years. Then why are you even considering it? The question sounded simple, but it contained everything. Why? Because he is my son. Because for 33 years I have lived in a for him mode. Because saying no and enduring his resentment is scarier than losing money. Because I'm tired, I said quietly. I'm tired of arguing with him. Tired of being the bad guy when I can't give him what he asks for. Helen placed her hand on mine, warm, calm, real. Marian, you are not a bad person for wanting to protect yourself. You don't have to destroy yourself to make someone else comfortable. But he's my son. And you are his mother. When was the last time he acted as if that mattered? This question hit me because I didn't know what to answer. When was the last time he had called just because? When had he asked how I was doing? When had he invited me somewhere? 3 years ago, I forced out. At Arthur's funeral. He held my hand then. Helen nodded with understanding, with pain. Grief is different. Some people get closer and some. She looked out the window. Some start to count other people's square meters. Do you think he planned this in advance? I think he's been watching you live alone for 3 years and doing the math. He saw that you have an apartment, he saw that you have savings. He's not stupid. He just learned to perceive it as a resource. I felt cold, as if the windows had been thrown open and a draft had passed through my heart. I need to look at those papers again, I said. Do you want me to come with you? No. My voice sounded firmer than I expected. I have to do this myself. I left her apartment with a heaviness in my chest, but I was no longer alone. I felt she was near, not physically but like a wall, like a support. When I returned, everything was as it had been. The brochure, the stack of papers. All waiting for my decision. I sat down and began to read. Not just to look, but to read, to understand, to analyze. Word by word, line by line. The guarantor bears joint and several liability. In the event of the principal borrower's failure to perform their obligations, the creditor has the right to collect the full amount from the guarantor. I felt a chill inside. This was not a formality. This was not a favor. This was a guarantee. This was a signature under someone else's dreams for which, if something went wrong, I would have to pay. With my money, with my home, with my life. I reached for the phone and dialed Eugene's number. He answered immediately. "Mom, I was hoping you'd call. Did you look at the papers?" "I did," I said. Calmly, clearly. I was even surprised myself at how even my voice sounded. "And I have questions." "Of course, ask away. What's not clear?" "This clause here, joint and several liability. Explain to me what that means." "Well," a pause. "That's a standard wording. There's nothing to worry about there." "Mom, what does it mean?" Another pause. Longer. "It means that if we suddenly can't pay, theoretically, the bank could ask you. But it won't come to that." "And if it does? And if I can't pay?" "Mom, come on. Are you winding yourself up? Answer me. If I can't pay, what then?" Silence. Then cautiously, "Then the bank will seize the collateral. That is, the house, or what is specified in the documents." "Both houses?" "Well, technically, yes." I closed my eyes. My home. My only home. The apartment that Arthur and I had bought with our first honestly earned money. Where I had raised Eugene. Where I had wanted to live out my days among the photographs, the memories, and the peace. "I see," I said. "But Mom, you're worrying for nothing. I have a good salary, everything is stable. We just need the bank to approve the application." "And why didn't you go to Olivia's parents?" They don't have that level of reliability." "Reliability? I am reliability. Not a mother. Not a woman who sat up with him at night when he was sick. Not the one who sold her jewelry to pay for his tutor. I am reliability." "I need to think some more," I said. "How much longer?" That note appeared in his voice that I had known since his youth, when he started to get irritated. "The seller is waiting for an answer by Friday. Today was only Wednesday. 3 days to decide whether to give everything away or to finally choose myself." "I'll tell you later," I answered and hung up. The sun was already setting. The room grew dark. The papers lay on the table like evidence. The house no longer seemed like a refuge to me. It had become collateral, a target, a bullseye. The phone rang again. An unknown number. "Hello, Marion? It's Kate. Kate Orlova. I don't know if you remember me." The name surfaced in my memory. Kate, the same girl Eugene had dated in college. The one who used to come over for holidays, helped me cook, laughed at Arthur's jokes. The one after whom Olivia had suddenly appeared. "Of course I remember, my dear. How are you?" "I'm fine. I just found out that Eugene is asking you to be a guarantor for a mortgage. And I decided that you need to know something." My heart skipped a beat. "What exactly?" "It's better to say it in person. I don't want to over the phone." We agreed to meet the next day in a cafe downtown. After I hung up, I sat in the dark. The windows reflected only my face, and in my head, one thing was pounding. What does she know that I don't? The documents lay before me, still bright, glossy, attractive. But now they were not an offer, but a warning. Not a chance, but a threat. But for the first time in recent days, I felt not fear. I felt anger. The cafe where Kate and I had agreed to meet was one of those that are deliberately made to look old-fashioned. Wooden tables, wicker lampshades, quiet music, coffee 3 times more expensive than it actually is. I arrived early, took a table in the corner by the window, ordered a cup, and felt my heart start to pound louder. Not from the coffee, from a premonition. Kate came in at exactly 10 as we had agreed, and she had hardly changed. The same short, collected woman, with that quiet self-confidence that immediately puts you at ease. Her hair was shorter now, a neat bob, her clothes were strict, businesslike, without any frills. It was clear that she worked in a serious firm. "Marion," she said, sitting opposite me, "thank you for coming. Thank you for calling." I looked at her attentively. There was something in her face, in her eyes, that was both anxious and determined. I know it's been a long time and I have no hard feelings. Honestly. But when I found out that Eugene was asking you to be a guarantor, I knew I had to tell you what I know so that you would be aware. How did you find out? I work at a law firm now, Klimov and Partners. We handle real estate cases. That house in Miami that Eugene is going to buy, we know the seller. He's an old client of ours. We're not his representatives in this deal, but we know what's going on. Kate took out her phone, unlocked the screen and showed me a credit report. It had a rejection of a mortgage application. In my son's name. Eugene's application was rejected 3 weeks ago, she said calmly. He has too high a debt load. Large credit card debts, a car loan in the red. There are already late payments on the apartment where they live now. The world around me seemed to tilt. There was a ringing in my ears. I remembered how confidently he had said, "My salary is more than enough." How easily he had waved his hand. "It's a formality, Mom." He said everything was fine, that he just needed a signature. I whispered. "In fact," Kate lowered her voice, "without you, the bank won't even consider the application. You are not just insurance, you are the main way to get any kind of approval. And also," she took out a printed sheet, "a deposit of $50,000 has been made to the seller. It's non-refundable. If the contract is not signed by Friday, the money is lost." $50,000, I could barely say. Where did he get that kind of money? I don't know, she answered honestly. But my feeling is that it's money he doesn't actually have. I sat back, feeling everything inside me tremble. He hadn't said anything. Not a word about the debts, about the late payments, about the fact that he had already made such a large deposit. "This isn't a request for help," I said slowly. "This is an attempt to drag me into a catastrophe, into someone else's miscalculation." "Exactly," Kate nodded. "I thought you had a right to know." Then she fell silent for a second, as if gathering her thoughts. "There's one more thing," she said more quietly. "I don't know if it's appropriate, but you didn't know why Eugene and I broke up, did you?" I shook my head. Arthur and I had decided not to interfere then. He had just said one day that it had happened that way. I was away visiting my mother. She was sick. And when I came back, I found out that he had started dating Olivia even before we had officially broken up. When I asked him, he said that he had more prospects with Olivia, that she could give him what I couldn't. Connections. A certain level. Status. I felt something clench inside me. An old wound that I didn't even know I had been carrying. "I'm sorry," I said. "You didn't deserve that. I don't hold a grudge." She gave a weak smile. I just remembered and understood. If he easily gave up a relationship for the sake of profit, he could do the same to you, especially when it comes to money. We said our goodbyes calmly without any extra words. And then I sat in the cafe for a long time, looking at the credit report she had left me. It was all debts, minuses, late payments. All in plain sight, all official. And all of it was hidden from me under the guise of everything is under control. He wasn't just in a difficult situation. He was in a free fall. And he wanted to drag me down with him. I drove home slowly, holding the steering wheel like a lifebuoy. In my head there was only one thought. This was not an accident. This was a scheme. A plan. He knew and still he came. At home, everything was in the same place. The papers, the brochure, like a trap waiting for a signature. The phone rang the moment I stepped over the threshold. On the screen, Eugene. "Mom." His voice was deliberately soft. "I wanted to discuss yesterday's conversation. We thought if you're still in doubt, we could offer you a small percentage in the house. Say 5% so that you're also in on the deal." I almost laughed. 5% of a house that, if something went wrong, would land on my shoulders with the entire debt. 5% of someone else's dream that could destroy everything I had saved for half a life. "Generous," I said calmly. "We can make it all official. You'll be not just a guarantor, but a co-owner." "A co-owner of what exactly?" "Of the house, of course. In Miami. With a view. And if you don't pay, Eugene? If problems start, what then with my 5%? A pause. Then cautiously, well, if the bank starts the seizure process, then of course all participants will lose their share. And I'll still be in debt. Theoretically, yes. But Mom, that's unlikely to happen. You're thinking of the worst again. And you're only thinking of the best. Convenient, isn't it? He fell silent. I continued. Tell me straight, have you already made a deposit? Well, yes, but it's not. For what amount, Mom? Eugene, the amount. $50,000. But that's. Where did you get that kind of money? Mom, that's not important anymore. It is important. Because now you want me to save you. And for the first time in my life, I've asked myself a question. Who will save me if you drag us both to the bottom? He was silent for a long time, then he muttered, we just can't back down. We've already invested. And you're making everything complicated. I'll think about it some more, I said and hung up without waiting for an answer. I sat in my kitchen, looked around. Everything here was ours, Arthur's and mine. He hadn't chosen any of it. He hadn't even been interested. But now he wanted to take it. Not the things, but the confidence, the safety net, my old age, my peace. I went to the window. Helen was standing in her garden, watering her roses. She saw me, looked up and waved. And I suddenly felt something inside me become stronger. Stronger. Tomorrow is Thursday. He's waiting for an answer by Friday. I already knew what I would say. But one question remained. Would I have the courage to say it out loud? That night I didn't close my eyes. I sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and old folders in which Arthur and I had kept our savings, printouts of deposits, the pension fund, everything we had ever saved. I counted again, and then one more time. The numbers started to blur in my head, but I stubbornly continued. Our apartment, the one I had lived in for 30 years, was now worth about $3.5 million. There was another $100,000 in a savings account and almost $200,000 in a pension fund. Altogether, a little over $3.8 million. This was the entire result of our frugal life. Everything we had achieved through honest labor, without adventures, without loans, without help. And the mortgage that Eugene wanted me to sign for was for $5.5 million. And if he suddenly stopped paying, and after my conversation with Kate, I no longer doubted that this was more than possible, this entire debt would become mine. I would lose not only money, I would lose my roof over my head, my security, everything that had given me support, everything for which Arthur and I had lived modestly for years. Towards morning, I brewed myself some tea and, unable to stand it any longer, called our old acquaintance, the lawyer Yuri. His voice on the answering machine was calm. Leave a message, I'll call you back during business hours. But I couldn't wait. I just said into the phone, Yuri, it's Marion. I need a consultation urgently. It's a serious matter concerning a guarantee. Please call me back as soon as you can. The sun was just rising when I finally turned off the light. I hadn't slept. I just sat, listening to the kettle hum, to the birds starting their morning songs outside the window, and I thought that if I didn't pull myself together now, it would be too late. Yuri called back at exactly 8. Punctual as always. Marion, good morning. What's the story? I told him everything. About the house in Miami, about Eugene's persuasion, about Kate, about the debts, about the unsigned documents. He listened in silence, only occasionally clarifying dates, sums, details. When I finished, he said very simply, under no circumstances should you sign. Under any circumstances. You will not just be a signature, you will become a second borrower just like him. And if he stops paying, all the obligations will be transferred to you in full. I understand, I nodded. But I need to know not only how to say no, but what to do next if he starts to pressure me, if a serious conflict begins. He was silent. Do you think there will be pressure? I remembered his cold voice when I asked about the deposit, remembered how he had accused me of selfishness, and how Olivia had supported all of it silently with that stony politeness of hers. I think so. He's used to me agreeing. Then you need to start gathering evidence. Save all conversations, text messages, calls. If there are threats, record them. This can already be qualified as pressure with the intent to extort. And can he somehow get access to your finances? Forcibly, without a signature? No, of course not. But if he has keys to your apartment, that needs to be resolved. He does. I was silent. I was even a little ashamed. Yes, I gave him a set after Arthur's death. Just in case. In case something happened. Then change the locks today, he said firmly. And one more piece of advice. Go to your bank. Put a ban on any large transactions without your personal presence and 2 documents. This is normal practice. And update your will. Let everything be formalized clearly without loopholes. When he hung up, I felt not fear but clarity. I was finally not reacting to what they wanted from me. I was starting to act on my own. The first thing I did was call a locksmith. The locks were changed in 2 hours. Eugene would no longer be able to come in as before, without a call, without an invitation. Then I went to the bank, the one where Arthur and I had kept our money since the late 90s. The manager, a young man, remembered us. He immediately offered me tea and sat me down at a table. Marion, what brings you here? I've come on business. I need to change the conditions for accessing my deposits and generally talk to someone reliable. Of course. What happened? I showed him the papers that Eugene had left. He read them for a long time, silently flipping through the pages, then he carefully placed them on the table. This is serious. The sum is very large. Are you really going to sign this? No. But I want to know exactly what would happen if I had signed, and what I can do to protect myself. If you had signed, you would be responsible for the entire amount. In case of non-payment, the bank would come to you. Collection, penalties, interest, seizure of property, everything as it should be. And from the documents, it's clear that in case of a late payment, your apartment is at risk, and your pension savings could be frozen, theoretically, partially claimed if they are not protected. I exhaled. Then please put a restriction. Anything over $5,000, only in person with a passport and a code. Even with confirmation from the director. We'll do it right now. And do you want to update your will? We have a lawyer in the branch. I do. Sign me up. When I left the bank, the sun was shining brightly outside, a light wind was blowing, and I suddenly realized I was no longer a victim. Not the one who is called just to help, just to sign. Don't refuse. I was the one who sets boundaries, who says no. And it was a new but very right feeling. I was just putting the kettle on when Eugene appeared. I saw him from the window, his stride confident, his face tense. He went to the door, pulled the handle. Nothing. He pulled again, then knocked. Mom, the door won't open. I paused, let him stand there for a bit. Let him think. Then I opened it. He was standing there with a confused face. The key doesn't fit. Did you change the locks? Yes. This morning. Why? Because this is my house. And I have decided who can enter it. Irritation flashed across his face, but he quickly hid it under politeness. Any security problems? No. I just want to decide for myself who comes and when. Mom, you're scaring me. Is this all because of the apartment? Come in, we need to talk. He came in, immediately looked towards the coffee table. The documents were in place. It was clear he was waiting for me to have already signed everything. Have you decided? I have. I pointed to the sofa. Sit down. We need to talk like adults. He remained standing. Stop escalating. Just tell me, are you going to help us or not? No, Eugene. I will not be a guarantor, and I will not sign the documents. He froze. Then his expression changed from polite to cold. You won't help us? I will not risk everything that my father and I built for the sake of something you can't afford. We can, he began. I explained to you. You've told me a lot of things. You just didn't tell me the truth. I held up the sheet that Kate had left. You didn't tell me that the bank had refused you, that you already have late payments, that you had a bankruptcy 2 years ago. He turned pale. Who told you that? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you hid all of it. And you wanted me to sign. He took a step forward, switched to the voice that used to work on his colleagues. Soft, logical, almost affectionate. Mom, well, everyone has difficulties. That's life. We just want to take a step forward. This house is a chance. We're offering you a stake. It's an investment. It's not an investment. It's a trap. And I'm not falling into it. The mask fell off. What was left was the face I had been afraid to see since his childhood. Angry, demanding. So you're refusing? Are you serious right now? I am preserving my security. I am choosing myself. You're 62. You're sitting alone in your apartment, hoarding money that you don't even use. What's so smart about that? The fact that I earned all of it myself with Arthur. Not for someone else's ambitions. He's dead, Mom. He's gone. And you're being greedy. We'll lose everything. And I'll tell the children why. And I'll tell them that their father chose appearances over responsibility. He looked at me without blinking. In his eyes was not a son, but a stranger. You'll regret this. You'll be left alone without a family, without grandchildren, and then you'll understand. I went to the door, opened it. Leave, Eugene. He left without a word, but in his back, I felt anger and emptiness. I was left alone, and for the first time in a long time I felt no guilt. The papers were still on the table, only now they weren't scary. They were just papers. I took them and threw them in the fireplace. The flames quickly consumed them. Only ashes were left. Tomorrow is Friday. Eugene will lose his deposit, lose the house. But I will keep mine. And that's the main thing. The letter from the court arrived on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after I had burned those same mortgage papers. A young man, obviously from a firm, brought it, polite, even a little embarrassed. I'm sorry, I'm just delivering, he said, handing me a thick envelope with a seal. I understand, I answered. Thank you, son. I closed the door, went to the kitchen, and sat at the table. On the envelope was the inscription, Marian Vasilieva, and a statement of claim. The sender was a law firm I didn't know. No, not the one where Kate worked. Another one from the center. I opened it, flipped through the pages. The dry language of legal formulations, but the essence was clear. Eugene was suing me for the sum of $5.5 million. He claimed that I had verbally promised to sign the guarantee, that they had counted on my support, and then I had suddenly refused, causing them financial damage. I read it all to the end. Without hysterics, without tears, I just read it. Then I dialed Yuri again. He claims that there was an oral agreement between you. He asked again when I had recounted the essence. Yes. Nonsense, he said with almost disgust. Even if you had promised something over the phone, that's not enough. For such sums, only a written obligation. He's counting on you being scared. And if I'm not scared, then we go to court and crush this. He's not a lawyer. He's digging his own grave. I hung up and felt no panic, no horror. There was only fatigue and a surprising relief. Everything had fallen into its place. Eugene was no longer trying to persuade, to ask, to pressure. He had shown who he was. Not a son who makes mistakes, but a man who is ready to sue his own mother to get what he considers his. 5 minutes later, the phone rang. His number. Picked it up. Mom, I take it you've seen everything. I have. I didn't want it to come to court. But you forced me yourself. You forced yourself. I just said no. We were counting on your support. We took on an obligation because you made it clear that you would help. And then you just ghosted us. I said I would think. And then I honestly said, no, we're a family, Mom. I was silent. If you don't want to bring this to a disgrace, he continued more restrainedly, then you can meet us halfway. Just compensate us for the amount of the deposit, that $50,000, and we'll withdraw the lawsuit. It will all be over. I smiled, but not from joy, from bitterness. So you want me to pay you for refusing to risk my home? I want everything to be resolved peacefully, without publicity. Trial is always dirty. Do you need that? Do you? You're suing your mother. For what? for not wanting to sign someone else's adventure. I'm seeking justice. You're seeking money. He fell silent. Then we'll see each other in court, I said and hung up. I sat in the kitchen. The tea was cold. The wind outside was flapping the curtain. I looked out the window and felt not anxiety, not resentment but clarity, as if everything had fallen into place. And now I had no more doubts about whom I was protecting. Not money, not walls. Myself. An hour passed. Helen knocked on the door. A plate of cookies in her hands. Her face was stern but full of support. I heard. The whole yard is buzzing, she said, sitting opposite me. Just don't you dare apologize. I'm not going to. He's suing you. You're his mother. He's lost his mind. He thinks he'll scare me. And you. And I? No. I looked her straight in the eye. He's crossed a line. I no longer feel guilty. Helen opened a folder she had brought with her. And I haven't been sitting around either. My granddaughter helped me gather some things. Inside were photographs, printouts, screenshots from social media. Olivia in boutiques with bags, in restaurants. Eugene on vacation in a deluxe hotel with a glass of wine in his hand. All from the last year. The dates were next to them. The captions were deliberately boastful. And all this at a time when they were barely making ends meet. This is all from her page. It's public, she didn't even close it. It has the date and the location. I turned page after page and felt something in my chest grow cold. This wasn't a mistake, it was a lifestyle. To spend someone else's money, then to demand, then to complain. There's more, Helen said. Here's a statement from their bankruptcy in 2021. The reason, medical expenses. For IVF. But they already had children. Exactly. They lied in court under oath. If they lied then, what's stopping them from lying now? I looked at these documents, at a strange life in which I was used as a backup exit, as a bank, as a save me button, and suddenly I understood. I am not alone, I am not powerless. I have the truth, I have people, I have a memory. And now documents. If it comes to court, I said quietly, can you testify? I'll be there. And not just me. The whole yard will stand up for you. We've seen it all for a long time. It's just that you used to tolerate it. I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. The court date was set quickly. The first preliminary hearing was in 2 weeks. It was held in a district courtroom, an old one with peeling walls and chairs with wobbly legs. I arrived early with Yuri. He was holding a folder with documents and calmly said, "The main thing is not to give in. Don't make excuses. You don't owe them anything." I know, I nodded. Eugene arrived a minute before the start. In a strict suit, serious, with a lawyer, a young, smug woman with a briefcase 3 times the size of her head. Olivia was with them in a black dress with a neat hairstyle, but with a face as if we were at a funeral. "Mom," Eugene nodded. "It's a shame it's come to this. And how did you want it?" I answered calmly. "You went to court. I'm not your mother now. I'm the defendant. Please be so kind as to address me by my full name." He flinched. Olivia looked away. When the hearing began, the judge, a woman in her 50s, was tough without a smile. She leafed through the materials, squinted, and took off her glasses. "Tell me, plaintiff, you claim that the defendant promised to be your guarantor?" "Yes," Eugene said firmly. "We had an oral agreement. We proceeded with the purchase of the house based on that." "And where is the confirmation of this agreement?" "Well, conversations. We discussed it together. We're a family." "That's not enough," Yuri said calmly. "Oral agreements on mortgage guarantees have no legal force and are certainly not grounds for a lawsuit." Eugene's lawyer tried to object, began to read some articles, to appeal to ethical norms, but the judge raised her hand. "Leave the emotions. Let's stick to the case." She addressed me. "Marian Vasilieva, do you confirm that you undertook to be a guarantor?" "No," I said clearly. "I asked for time to think. I didn't sign any documents. On the contrary, I refused when I saw that the sum was huge and that I was not being told the full picture." Clarify, did you find out about the plaintiff's debts? Yes. And I have confirmation. A printout of the credit report. In addition, there are screenshots from social media demonstrating expenses during the period of alleged financial difficulty. The judge took the papers, leafed through them, and made a note. We will attach this to the case. Eugene sat, clenching his fists. Olivia was staring at the table. For the first time in a long time, I felt that I was not alone in a corner, that I was not the one making excuses, but the one setting boundaries. After the hearing, Yuri and I went outside. What do you think? Will they back down? We'll see. Maybe they'll try to negotiate. 2 days later, Olivia called me. Not Eugene, but her. Marion. Her voice was polite but not as cold as before. Can we meet? About what? I would like to talk in person. Without formalities. Eugene doesn't know I'm calling. We agreed to meet in a park, on a bench near a fountain. Olivia arrived on time, all restrained, collected as always. Only something in her eyes had flickered. Thank you for agreeing. Speak. She exhaled. We didn't expect it to go to court. I really thought that Eugene would just talk to you and you would somehow come to an agreement. But he started to act on his own and dragged everyone into it. And now it's too late. It's not too late, I said. It will be too late when the court wraps all this up, and he has to explain why he filed a lawsuit against his own mother. I don't want everything to fall apart, she suddenly said. We have 2 children. We are up to our ears in debt. I don't even understand where the truth is anymore. He's always saying that you betrayed him, that without your help we'll lose everything. And I'm not sure anymore that he's telling you the whole truth himself. He's been lying to me too. And you were silent? Yes. I was silent, as I thought he was right. But now I'm scared. I looked at her. A woman, a mother just like me, but with a different choice. She hadn't defended herself. She had followed him to the end, and now she was afraid. Why didn't you stop him then, when he was starting this lawsuit? I tried. He said, if my mother doesn't want to help, let her at least pay her debt. And then he had already filed the documents. I couldn't persuade him. Now, she silently took a sheet out of her bag. A copy of a letter from the bank. The amount of the debt, a warning about penalties, and the final payment deadline. In a week. Then the case would be handed over to collectors. Is this true? I asked. Yes. We can't cope anymore. He's still stalling, taking out microloans at high interest rates. And she fell silent. I filed for divorce, she suddenly said. I was surprised. 3 days ago. Without a scandal. I just submitted the application. I don't want to be in this anymore. I don't want my children to see how he tramples on those who are close to him. I loved him very much, but he's broken. Or maybe he was always like this. He wasn't always like this, I said quietly. But he became so over the years because no one stopped him in time. Olivia stood up. I just wanted to say that I'm not on his side. And I won't testify against you. I nodded. Thank you, Olivia. And if you ever need help with the children, something around the house, just call. We are now probably not strangers. I watched her walk away. Her back was straight, her shoulders were tense, but her step was confident. She had made her choice. And I had made mine. The final court hearing was scheduled for Friday at 10 in the morning. I arrived a little early in a gray coat, neatly dressed, with my hair gathered, as I always did for important matters. Yuri was already waiting. In his hands was a voluminous folder, evidence, testimonies, documents, including what Helen had brought, and the statement that Olivia had provided. Eugene arrived 5 minutes before the start. Alone. Without Olivia. Without a lawyer. Only with a thick folder from which printouts were sticking out. He was pale, his face was tired, his eyes were blue from lack of sleep. It was clear that things were not going well for him. When he was called into the courtroom, he walked past me without even glancing. I didn't look away. I no longer had any fear or resentment inside me. only an understanding. He had chosen this path himself. The judge was the same, businesslike, restrained. She opened the session, glanced at the papers. Plaintiff, do you insist on your claim? Yes, Eugene answered. But I want to add something. It has come to my attention that my mother, the defendant, deliberately concealed her savings from me, although she had promised to help. This shows her bad faith. I believe that she violated an oral agreement. Yuri didn't stand up, didn't raise his voice, just calmly raised his head. Your Honor, may I ask the plaintiff one question? Please. You claim that you were counting on the defendant's help? Yes. And were you aware that at the time of the discussion of the deal, you already had a negative credit rating? Eugene hesitated. That's irrelevant. It is relevant. We have provided a statement from the credit bureau confirming the rejection of the mortgage before you asked for a signature. Moreover, you had already made a deposit, also without a guarantee of her participation. That is, you consciously took a risk, and now you want to blame your mother for not saving you from the consequences of your own decision. The judge looked up. Plaintiff's answer? Eugene was silent. We have also provided photo and video evidence indicating that the plaintiff and his wife were leading a lifestyle inconsistent with their stated financial difficulties. Yuri continued. This may indicate an attempt at conscious manipulation of a relative for the purpose of obtaining a benefit. Eugene jumped up. Are you trying to say that I'm deceiving my mother? Yuri calmly answered, No. The court will say that. The judge put down the papers. It's all clear. The decision will be announced in 3 days. We left the courtroom. Eugene caught up with me at the exit. Mom, he began. I may have gone too far. But you understand I was desperate. And now you're at a loss, I answered. Not because you lost the case, but because you betrayed. He took a step back, looked as if he had seen something different in me for the first time. Not a mother, not a spare wallet, but a person. You really don't want me to be a part of your life, Eugene? I sighed. I wanted a lot of things. But now I only want one thing, to be left alone. Even if I apologize, it's too late. He lowered his head, turned, and walked away. I stood by the courthouse and suddenly felt as if a heavy bag that I had been carrying for years had been untied from my back. Inside was guilt, fear, debts that were not mine. It all fell to the ground. I didn't pick it up. When I got home, Helen was already waiting on the landing with a pie. Well, it's all fair, I said. Now we wait for the decision. And he ruined everything himself. I'm not holding on anymore. You're a smart woman, Marion. A real one. You didn't break. I took the pie and we went up together. And in the evening, as I was washing the dishes, I received a message from an unknown number. Marion, hello? It's Christina, Eugene's ex-girlfriend. I heard you're suing him. I'd like to talk to you. I have something that might help you. Please call me. It's important. I sat down. My hands were shaking. A name as if from the past. I remembered Christina, the one who had loved him sincerely, the one he had then left without an explanation for Olivia. I dialed the number. Hello. Hello. Her voice was quiet but confident. Thank you for calling back. I don't want to interfere, but I saw the news that Eugene is suing you. And I'm not surprised. He once did something similar to me. Not in court, but he took out a loan in my name under the guise of a deal. I was young then, in love, and then I was left with the debt. He disappeared. Why didn't you say anything then? I was naive, thought I could handle it all myself. Then I got married, life went on. But when I saw what he was doing to you, I realized he hadn't changed. He always uses people, only before it was girls, now it's his mother. Do you still have the documents? Yes. I can send you copies. Send them. It's important. 20 minutes later, my email had copies of an old contract, receipts, correspondence, and the main proof that he had been doing everything according to the same scheme. Affectionately, cleverly, through trust, and then everything on another person. I printed everything out, put it in a folder. The trial was almost over, but maybe not quite. The court's decision was delivered in 3 days on a Monday. I came alone. Yuri had said in advance that my presence was not formally required, but I wanted to hear everything with my own ears. The judge came in, sat down, and leafed through the materials. On her face, as always, not a single emotion. The court has ruled to dismiss the claim of the plaintiff, Eugene Kirilov, against the defendant, Marian Vasilyeva. It is established that the obligations under the mortgage agreement are not confirmed. The defendant is not liable for the transaction. Then came the formulations, numbers, deadlines. I listened and couldn't believe it. Not because I doubted the truth, but because it was over. The judge looked at me, then at Eugene. He had come after all, without a lawyer, in jeans, with his shoulders slumped, not even glancing in my direction. When everyone had left, he remained seated. I walked past him quietly, calmly, and only at the door did I stop. Eugene. He looked up. Do you know why you lost? He was silent. Not because of the court and not because I defended myself, but because you went to war where there was only love. He said nothing, and I left. That same evening, Yuri called me. Congratulations, Marian. It's all fair. Do you want to file a counterclaim? Moral damages, reputational costs. I was silent. No, I don't want a continuation. Are you sure? Yes. I don't need to take revenge. I just want to be left in peace. That's also a victory, he said. The next day, I closed my old account and opened a new one, transferred all my savings, and made a deed of gift for the apartment. Not to Eugene, of course, but to myself, so that no one, neither the court nor the bank, could get to it. And then I went to a notary, made a new will, and wrote everything down to the last penny. I wasn't planning on leaving, but I wanted to be at peace, if suddenly everything would be as I had decided. Without manipulation, without surprises. 6 months passed. I no longer heard from either Eugene or Olivia. Only once did I see him in a store. He walked past as if he didn't recognize me. I wasn't offended. On the contrary, it was probably the first time that he hadn't tried to take anything, hadn't smiled, hadn't persuaded, hadn't thought that he was owed. He just walked past. And in that was a liberation. I live quietly now. In the morning I drink tea on the balcony, read and tidy up. Sometimes I visit Helen, sometimes she visits me. We help each other with small things. And sometimes over tea she suddenly says, "You know, Marian, you're strong, really strong. Not many could have done that." And I smile. Not because I want to seem better, but because I know I just didn't let myself be broken. Olivia wrote recently, briefly, humanly. Thank you for not responding with evil then. I'm with the children. We're holding on. If ever, I'm always in touch. I read it and didn't write anything back. Not because I'm angry, but because I understood that everything has already been said. Now I have that same folder in my desk drawer, empty, without papers. I sometimes open it and look to remind myself. Trust is not a signature. It's a choice. And when you choose yourself, it's not a betrayal, it's maturity. And if someone didn't understand, that's no longer my fault. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. If it resonated with you, please give it a like, subscribe, and be sure to write in the comments if you have had similar cases or what you think about it. This helps to promote the video and inspires me to create even more such soulful stories. Thank you very much. Be healthy, live long and happily.